Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are here watching on YouTube, sorry for the delay there. We had a little bit of a glitch. But if you look at the link down below, you'll see a little link to Zoom. You can go there and actually become part of the conversation. If you click on the link in Zoom, you can actually join Mukana, where you become a producer. Your questions and your voting especially, define what we talk about. We spend a little bit more time at the top of the hour than the bottom of the hour, so it's really good to get up there and ask questions early, and also to vote on them. Let us know what you want to talk about, what you want to prioritize. Now, if you think you want to contribute more, become even more part of the community, you can join the panel. You can get here as early as 6. Check out, make sure that your kit is all working the way you expect it to. But we do mic checks at 6:40, and you have to be here by then to be part of the panel for each day. And then 7 o'clock is when we start the general discussion. Any discussions, any questions that you have about media production, virtual production, you can ask them there. Second hour is usually something that we've all decided that we would like to talk about a little bit more. So, and a lot of this, by the way, is driven from second hour suggestions and requests that we get within Discord. And you can join Discord if you're here by 6:40 as well. It's in Mukana. You do have to be in Mukana to get that. So, anyway, so we've decided that this is the second hour, or what we want to do for the second hour. And today we're going to talk about Cinamaker. We have the folks from Cinamaker here. They're going to talk about how to use your iOS devices to edit between. You can basically edit live streams or even edit events in Zoom. So they're going to talk about how all of that works in the second hour today. Tomorrow, we've got Leo Laporte coming in from Twit, and he's going to talk about Club Twit. He's going to talk about podcasting and all. Basically, he's going to talk about what you ask about. You're the producers. So join us for that. That's going to be a fun Thursday. Friday, we're talking about super sources. We're just going to basically trade notes. I think a lot of us are doing super sources in different ways. And so we're going to talk about the most efficient way to do those within the atem. And then, of course, Saturday is the long day. The second 2 hours are all dedicated to education. Then Nick Justishin is going to come in and talk about Unreal Engine. We're going to work on building a metahuman, getting the metahuman into Unreal Engine, and then getting our phone connected to Unreal, as all in the process there. So anyway, that's what we're going to work on with Nick, not all in one day. The first day is just getting the metahuman into Unreal. So we're going to work on that. And then noon to 2, we're cooking. We're working with Matt in the kitchen, and we are doing a test lab where we kind of get in. We don't have a lot, we don't know if this is going to work or not. We open it up, the raw recipe, and we go through and figure out what's not in that recipe. We've learned that if you want to do cooking together, the kind of recipe you have to write is much different than what they put in books. And so we're experimenting with what those things need to be. And then, of course, at 5 o'clock, we start Matt in the kitchen, where you can actually watch the show from the back end. You can hear the comms. You can also watch the cooking. We open the comms at that room at 3, actually, and you can just listen to us get set up and everything else. And then at 5, we have it. And then after the show, we all talk about what we saw on the show, what worked, what didn't work, all those things. So it's pretty fun. So hopefully you'll join us for the long day on Saturday. It's pretty much rock solid from about 5 a.m. until about 8. So anyway, it's a lot of fun, and now it's time to jump to the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Sky Gleason here in the panel starts off the first one with ONZOOM was tested last night by several on this panel. What was the outcome of both the ease of use and, once in the Zoom, ONZOOM, the quality of 1080?
How'd it look? I don't know. I didn't see it. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, we verified that the 1080 was enabled, which was fantastic. Looked great. So that delivery was successful. I think we did have a few login issues, though.
What were the login issues?
That's my question, because there were barriers out there, and Guy was on the other side of that. So I don't know.
Guy, what did you see there?
Yeah, in my back end for my org, since I'm an admin, I had to turn on the ability for people in the org to join on Zoom meetings. So that was something that I had seen before, but I forgot about, and it wasn't enabled. But it was super frustrating because I was trying to get in. I kept just getting these errors, and I was just sitting there like, I need to be doing other things right now, and this has killed 20 minutes of my life, and I was super not happy. So
it wasn't super. So it sounds like we probably need one more week of doing what we're doing, and spend a little bit more time banging on it to see how it goes. But it's I do think that there's a real opportunity with ONZOOM. We just want to make sure we land well. So
no pushback. Just again, we just have
we want to get it.
Okay.
I'm ready to hand it off as soon as you guys are ready. So, or as soon as OnZoom's ready, if we feel like we understand why it does. Everything has its own quirks. We just have to understand those quirks before we start pushing lots of people into it. JJ?
Yeah, the other thing we were trying to test with Benjamin was whether or not the on-zoom functionality also carries over into it, because a lot of the controls that could exist in there, and we had problems with that registering. So we were testing all the things.
I was going to try to bring up every time I think about every time when I think about, like, when you don't have everything correct, you know, when you're trying to figure out why, you know, when you create something that doesn't have an outcome, like you create something that you're going to open up an event and things don't work. I'm afraid I always think of this Far Side. The prisoners, like the prisoners all, they went to escape and they're all just mashed up in a little anthill. So I don't know if some of you aren't old enough to, but I think of that. That's literally what I picture every single time when we don't have good onboarding, when people can't get in seamlessly. It's like they're just like little prisoners all smashed up against each other.
Gary Larson from Seattle. So I guess my question, Alex, would be the getting into an event. If you could please explain the ease of use or the not ease of use. How do you get people into an event? Because I think that was
so what we have to do is, I think what we ought to do is next week we'll set up a time right after this show to just push everybody into it. Like, you know, it's fine to do it with 2 or 3 people. Let's do it you guys should be testing it every day to try to figure out what those things are that caused it with 5 people or 3 people or whatever. Then we'll push 100 at it and just see what. But again, we're the best test case because everyone here is willing to kind of play along and figure stuff out and give us feedback.
To a point, I owe Guy a lot of coffee that he doesn't drink. So
exactly.
I'm running out of things to give people.
But we that's the way to figure it out, is to stress test it. So we'll stress test it next week and start to try to figure out what that looks like. All right, next question.
Jeff Francis is up next from Columbia, South Carolina, and he has a question actually for Courtney. What's the minimum spec Beelink that can serve as a Zoom client for ISO pinning or for video file playback?
Well, for video file playback, the no longer available Gemini M is fine, which is the one I was using, and almost any of them have. The Gemini M has a more recent processor. It's a Gemini processor that has onboard GPU encode and decode of H.264, and that's important if you're going to be playing back, H.264 or MP4s, which is what I use it for. As far as encoding, it can do the encode, but now, as we're discovering from Jonas, for uplink to Zoom is apparently discriminating by counting the number of cores, and that particular one, the MJ, has 4 cores, and it's a Celeron, so it only has 4 threads. And apparently, Zoom is just counting the cores and cutting you off from 1080p and leaving you at 720p if you don't have more than 4 cores, which seems, and since it can be using the GPU to encode, it doesn't make any sense at all for that discrimination. But it does work fine at 720p. And Alex, you may have some more input because you've tested it.
We tested it extensively. 720. Yeah. So, for what we needed it for when we bought a couple of them, we'll use those computers for something else. They're useful, but they're not going to be, we're going back to the M1s for now.
Have you tested it for 1080p into other applications, other streaming applications other than Zoom?
We haven't. We don't use anything else. So it doesn't seem like, we're not going to go back to Skype. That's a kind of a dumpster fire. And so there's nothing else out there right now that provides the level of clean aperture ability that we have with Zoom at the moment. So we have the level of control, the ability to get, to have something that's more robust than WebRTC. There's a whole bunch of things that we need, that we can't get anywhere other than Zoom. So we're not really we don't need to test anything else because it's not like we would go to it. So right now we're going to go back to the M1s. We'll do some more tests. But the problem is to get to the level that you're talking about. By the time we start spending it on a PC, even the BeeLinks that are larger, we end up spending almost as much as an M1. So it starts to not make as much sense.
They do make a Ryzen version, which I have not tested, and that might
right. But I think that's in the 500
cores. Yeah,
I think it has 500
bucks. Yeah, you're
right. So once we get within a couple $100 of an M1, we're just going to
That's a lot faster than the M1.
I don't know. For what we need, I will fully admit that we lean Mac. So if I can get something a lot less money for on a PC, I will. If it gets within $150 of a Mac, I'll just get a Mac. so that's kind of our thing. Next question.
Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas is up next with on the Zoom website, support for quote unlimited cameras is listed as a feature for Zoom rooms. And the pop-up note says that you can share 2 cameras quote at the same time. Is this true or misleading? Or are they leaning on the share content from the second camera path with a lower frame rate? And he has a note there for link.
Well, we've definitely taken, we would test that a little bit. We've definitely taken, have someone screen share when they're doing slides, and we have the person and the slides, and they're both coming in, but it is a lower frame rate. It's just been slides, so it hasn't been that big of a deal. I do think that if you had the share content, you probably could share 2. The switching back and forth within Zoom is pretty painful. Like, cause it's so like when you request control and then you start switching back and forth between the 2 cameras, there's a huge lag, and it's not pretty to go back and forth. It's not like editing. So you do want to get 2 outputs, from there if you can. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I've brought this page up with Zoom a few times, especially when I got my room. And more to the point, this line right here that basically says for all plans, 1080p HD video and audio. And they're not giving a lot of people 1080p video and audio. So I've brought this up several times to Zoom. They haven't changed it, so I'm not exactly sure.
Well, I think the other thing you have
going on there.
You have to you test the 1080 rooms point to point. So it's very different. So what we had for a long time is when it's one person going to one person, we see 1080p. When we start adding people, we now have 1080p, but when we had meetings, it would go down to 720 immediately if there was more than one person that was connected to the meeting.
Yeah, and I had 360, and then when I emailed them, they finally gave me 720, but they wouldn't give me 1080.
And that was for rooms?
Yeah. That's the problem I've been having.
Interesting. Okay. I'm not sure. Next question.
Comes from Brian Carpenter in Cleveland, Ohio. And Brian says, is there any ETA on the promised office hours microphone comparisons for each budget level? I'm holding off my purchase. Along with the microphone tests, can the evaluations consider and state the minimum required interface or preamp typically required to get acceptable results?
I think what we need is a day where we sit around and talk about which mics we should buy or which mics I should buy. and then I'm not getting really expensive ones. We already know. We have the mics that we know or that I'm willing to purchase. I own, I think, most of the mics that are necessary, or somebody owns them here. But in the kind of what I think we should talk about is 3 or 4 mics that are sub $250 or sub $300 that we think, the sub 200. What mics should we get? And I'll buy them. I'll buy them very, very carefully, open them, and we'll see, and then send back the ones that didn't work. So, but I think that we can do that relatively soon. Go ahead, Jeff.
So I think part of the question about this is, do we want this to be a live test where we have a person with those microphones and can switch between them, or do we pre-record some audio excerpts in a controlled situation?
I'm willing to do both. I'm willing to do both, where I can very quickly. I have 10 input. I have a lot of inputs, so I could easily kind of set up a similar setup within the Scorpio to just have a bunch of mics that are all there. There might be a little bit of me swapping one mic out for another one, so we'll think about what that looks like. But happy to do it live. Happy to record it at the same time. Happy to we can do all of those things to kind of test each one to see. I think it'll only be 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 mics, but shouldn't take too long. It sounds like a good second hour, though. Go ahead, Leo.
I think it has to be live because it's the whole point of it is that you're doing it there and then and hearing all the different microphones and hearing what everybody else sounds and just
and then we can put the recordings up.
General comparison.
I'll put the recordings up as well so people can analyze it and listen to it again and see what it sounds like in clean. Because again, I think you're right that we have to do it through Zoom because the question is does it make any difference? Like it can be really, really amazing, but if it doesn't make any difference in Zoom, what we're trying to define is what people can use in Zoom. Go ahead, Chris, and then Bill.
I'd like to nominate Paul as our test subject.
He's already got them all. He doesn't have to buy anything. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was going to volunteer the voice booth for it so you'd eliminate all the background noise, but background noise present might be a good factor to use with the microphones.
I think my room is a good room in that sense because there's a little bit of noise, there's a little bit of things going on. It's not a perfect environment. Go ahead, Jeff.
So off the top of your head, what would the 4 mics be?
The ones that off the top of my head, I would say, I think that this one's a little bit more expensive, but I think it's worth an SM7B or at least the MV7. That's probably a mic that we should at least think about there. Of course, I have the Heil is one that we'll put into the mix. I have a TLM 102, so that would be another one that we could kind of compare on the upper end of that process. Then the other one, a Yeti, I think is a pretty standard mic. We have to think about how we want to measure these when they, come to that. I think that I can obviously offer up a DPA and a Countryman, so we can just compare those as headsets as well as the Pile and the Pulsam. I have all of those.
But are any of those under 250? I thought that
the Pile and the Pulsam are. No, I'm saying I'm just talking about all the mics. I'm saying I'm not going to buy a lot of ones that are over 250.
I see what you're saying.
I have the other ones. And then there is. I'd like to get the Rode mic that's like $99. I think that makes sense. Go ahead, Chris.
I would put an SM58 in that mix.
Yeah, I can definitely put the SM58. I can tell you that the high end on the SM58 is noticeably problematic. When I use it, but
I mean it's actually quite similar to an SM7B, and
it is the same capsule.
It's $100. Yeah, it's a good entry level mic. I did 3 years of podcasting on an SM7B.
Yeah. That's what I started.
SM58.
Hey, Chris, I was going to say SM58. I was going to say that. Also, I think you should throw in the ATR 2100.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we'll get that in the next week or two. We just need to make a list. So if we can start working on a list somewhere, maybe an audio in Discord, and we'll make the list, and I can. Again, I'm going to carefully open them. I'm probably not going to keep all of them, but we'll test them all and see how they turn out. All right, next question.
Moving on, Felipe Bias, our friend in the Prague, Czech Republic, says, what's the panel's opinion about yesterday's news on Slido's acquisition by Cisco?
I think that was announced a while ago. I thought it had already been done. Go ahead, Charles, and then Leo.
Yeah, this started at the end of last year. It's mostly for Cisco to add options to their WebEx interface and all that stuff. The one thing I wasn't too sure about it is that you send questions through a hashtag and the host picks them at their leisure. It's supposed to have a voting thing, but I didn't get to see that.
It can.
Yeah, it's, I think for Cisco, it's a good move because they are providing service to very large corporations and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, for them, it's not a bad deal. And actually, Slido got a funding in 2013 of like 30 grand. So for them to be bought out,
Well, and it wasn't just Slido either. It was there was a whole group of software that was all bought. Slido was part of the package. So it's hard to tell exactly how much was paid for Slido specifically because it was part of a larger software package that was purchased by Cisco that definitely makes sense for Cisco. Like the whole package makes sense. I think Slido is just a piece of that. Go ahead, Leo.
So yeah, the key to me is that it's the interactivity, and this Slido, I use it a lot. I think it's a really good interactive. The cloud, there's lots more than just the questioning. It gives you the ability to do polls. It gives you the ability to do word clouds. So you can literally say to people as they're watching, where are you watching this from? And a word cloud just explodes in front of you on the screen, which is very, very interactive in a very good way, particularly in education, to bring people together. But, the thing that they seem to say is it's going to stay standalone. So and there was always talk about it going to. They announced that it was going to go into Zoom, but we haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
I'd say that the folks who are higher up in the Cisco infrastructure, like CCARs, Cisco Certified Architects, they refuse to use anything but Cisco products. So the fact that you have now something that allows them to be interactive will allow engineers to be more interactive.
Yeah. Next question.
Scott Mueller of Clinton Corners, New York is up next with, was it said that audio on the ATEM Extreme was subpar? Was it just the 1/8-inch mic inputs that are the problem, or was it audio coming in through HDMI 2?
Well, the audio inputs themselves are problematic. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it's the analog audio inputs that are subpar, being that they're unbalanced. The HDMI seems to be fine, and the Fairlight software is pretty good as a mixer.
Yeah, but when you bring it in with a camera, then you don't get all the tools that you would have with the audio, like sync and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that it's just kind of wonky. It's not well designed, and the rest of the switcher is pretty well designed. So it just feels like they just kind of missed the bar on the audio side. But that's because they're primarily a video company that's still, I think, absorbing audio. Go ahead, Jeff.
I've been trying lots of methods to get good audio into that 1/8-inch input. The next one in the next couple of weeks I'm going to try is one of the DANTE Avio adapters. So I can take balanced right up to it, DANTE right up to it, convert to balanced, and then get to unbalanced in the best way. So I'll report back on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, perfect. Go ahead, Leo.
Very quickly, I was just interested, Jeff. When I turned off the 5 volts, because there's an option now in the latest version to turn off the 5 volts, the audio cleaned up a lot for me.
Interesting. Yeah. Next question.
Christopher Brown in the Outer Banks of North Carolina says, has anyone had six? What?
Sorry. I grew up going to the Outer Banks. So
it's not the Outer Banks?
I know. No, I'm saying it's the Outer Banks. I'm just excited that someone from the Outer Banks is watching the show. I'll be there in June. So Christopher, you and I
thought I got the state wrong or something. Okay,
the first time I'm leaving the state, I don't know how long. So, anyway, so I've been going to the Outer Banks for like 45 years. So anyway, next, go ahead, keep going.
Has anyone had success using OBS Studio's native audio features like compression? I'm looking to see if it's possible to purchase a USB mic to improve my audio quality without having to run a mic through an external mixer. And if so, what USB mic would the group suggest?
We're all working on that. We were just talking about that. So we'll get back to you on the mic. We're going to start doing that test probably within the next couple of weeks. So within the next couple of days, we'll probably define what mics we should get, and then we'll test them and get back to you on that. As far as compression and OBS, does anyone use the OBS tools for that? Compression is a fairly commoditized solution at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if it did a relatively good job. Probably not a great job, but probably a mathematically correct job. JJ McKenna says no. Yet. All right. Next question.
Johnny Estias in Manila, Philippines said, sorry, I missed the mixer episode. I'm about to pull the plug on an X32 rack with an X-DANTE card so that I can easily create mix minuses for virtual event guests I'm bringing in via individual Zoom calls on BeeLinks, courtesy of Courtney. This is the best. Is this the best, most cost-effective solution for this?
I think it's a great solution. Yeah, I mean, I think that is it's a very, very solid solution to make this work. Go ahead, John.
The DANTE, I've had one on order for a couple months now, so it's way, way, way back ordered.
Evidently, it's easy to get in South Africa. So if only we had a contact there.
Only we knew someone there.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois says, has anyone beta tested Starlink and tested it with Zoom?
Paul's tested it. You've tested Starlink with Zoom?
No, I was just going to say I have it on order. It hasn't come yet, but when it comes, I'll give you a full report, okay?
Excellent. John?
I have a colleague, and we're doing tests on Starlinks, but Starlinks is beta, so we'll be connected, and then the bird flies over. Not an airplane bird, but and it drops it. Yeah. And it's not there all the time, because the trail of satellites and the latency is having some trouble. So, but we're doing more tests on it. Actually, on Friday. So I'll may have more to know next week. He loves it though. He was in the middle of nowhere, and he feels like he's seen the light. But
I think that Starlink will be life changing for a lot of folks. I think my parents will. It'll change. They're in the middle of nowhere, and they can't. They are lucky to get a megasecond. So I think that that they will. It'll be just. But I don't think it'll work with synchronous video ever. I mean, I just think that the structure of the way the satellites work, I think will make it very difficult to have synchronous low latency video. Doesn't really work well in Wi-Fi. So like that's in our house. We're talking about going to space. So I think that I have very low expectations of Starlink replacing what we're doing here, but I have high expectations that it's going to really change what people can do and where they can work and everything else, as long as they don't have to get on a video chat. All right, next question.
Mark Harder in Sunnyside, Queens, New York says, enjoyed my time on the panel May the 4th. Thank you. Looking at improving my video, I have a lamp that offers 3000 Kelvin warm, 4000 Kelvin cool, and 5000 Kelvin daylight. If I use any color other than 5000 Kelvin, it seems Zoom auto corrects my video to that color. Is this a known thing?
Zoom isn't really doing that. It's the camera. The camera's making that decision. If you're on a Mac, you can get something called webcam settings that will it takes over what we call the UVC control. So basically, it will now let you set those numbers if you want to, or roughly set those numbers. On a PC, little harder to get the control. I know we've talked about it. We haven't found any apps that I think we're super happy with, but. Yeah, so I think that's the challenge there. Eventually, what you'll end up doing is you'll start buying LED lights like from Newer or Scritty, I think it's Scritty is or whatever. But eventually, you'll get something like an Aperture or Nan light. Like that's the trajectory that we generally see happen over here. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas is up next with Zoom has various partner programs, hardware partners, referral partners, reseller partners, and certified integrator partners. Any experiences with any of these from the panelists?
So far, we were looking at doing a bunch of development. So we're in contact with Zoom related to some of that. And our experience has been great. They're giving us more support than we're ready to use. So that's been generally our experience. Talking to others, it seems like sometimes the documentation is a little sparse, but the actual interaction is really good. So that's what we've heard so far from folks that we work with. But our experience has been incredible. Next question.
Leo Mendel of London in the UK and here on the panel says, how can you calibrate a Lufs meter remotely? If you send pink noise, will that work?
I think for us, it's more of being accurate, being consistent as opposed to being accurate. So I think that we're, we usually have been we've decided that it's good with what Mickey had. What happened was we brought a different WLM in that isn't the same. I would ask that question when you see Mickey here, because he'll talk about how he has it set up. Go ahead, Leo.
What I'm just trying to work out is if 4 of us put one up and somebody injected pink noise, would we all end up with this? Would pink noise work? Could we all end up with the same levels? That's what I'm just trying to work out, so that we can say, okay, we know our meters are running at the same level. Yeah. That's all I'm trying to work out.
Solid question. And we've never had, this is like the first time we've ever not had both Mickey and TJ in it. And now Hosmuk has one, but we're not certain that one's the same. Or at least we don't think it is. And so it's just a matter of figuring out what that state is. And I think we have to document the setup. Go ahead, Bill, and then Jeff.
I was a little surprised at that split when we had 2 meters in here momentarily earlier. One looked like it was averaging about minus 28 or 29, and the other one was just minus 9 or minus 19. That's a big split. That's a lot of dB difference in two things that are supposed to be measurement devices.
Go ahead, Jeff, and then Hosmuk.
If we use a static like 1K tone, that should work because that will remove the time constant. If you want to use pink noise, I'd recommend we band limit it so that we're not dealing with full 20 to 20 kilohertz, because certainly the Zoom channel is not going to do that. So probably band limit something more in the speech range. But we do need to confirm that the time constant settings of the averaging of the meter are set the same as well.
And we also have to be careful that when you turn anything on constant in Zoom, oftentimes it will go oh, that's noise, and it just gets rid of it. So that's the other challenge of putting anything in constant, is that it doesn't do that as well. And what's interesting is, like, for me, the thing that confuses me is that I haven't changed anything, and mine is coming in hot. So it's an odd thing. Hosmog?
Yeah, I had to jump out of the meeting, so I'm not sure if the WLM we have right now is the same, but my meter and this meter is now in sync.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, Leo?
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out. It's not just for this. It's like, you want to walk away and you go, I know that this meter does what it's supposed to do. And because sound is always variable, it's trying to find a consistency or so that we know, because it could be just something on when I brought mine up, it was completely different. And I just wonder if it's something on my Mac or it's somebody else's, and I don't know which one is right and which one is wrong.
I got to think through that. Yeah, what we need to do is have something that's just on all the time that we've decided is the one, and then anybody can invite it to a meeting, and it just shows up, and it just goes, "Hello, I'm here are the meters," and maybe a bunch of other
maybe it's called meeting meters or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Does now a guy could we bring meeting meters in here?
So right now it's just like a dummy head, because we're having to leave on an instance 24/7, which was costing us $750 a month, and not just one. We had to leave on multiple. So I killed it down for right now until we can figure out how many BeeLinks by Courtney that we need to buy.
Right.
And we're working with Andy Perluccio in the back end to see if we can do it another method through not rooms, because rooms are $49 a month. But yeah, theoretically it works. We've got it working, and it's awesome. It's just it's expensive, and the Excel document doesn't pencil out at the moment.
Right. Yeah, Jeffrey?
Just for reference, Baiju is one doing the WL meter, and he did do the fix. There was just something on his end that needed to be fixed.
Oh, got it. Okay, sounds good. Next question.
Jeff Francis of Columbia, South Carolina is up next from the panel here. For office hours Zoom to YouTube, do you use the built-in YouTube streaming or the custom streaming service?
We use the built-in streaming. The custom one has been really buggy. So it seems to want to have a connection to Zoom that, like when I do it, I just want it to be a dumb connection, like just go out that direction, but it doesn't seem like that works all the time, or it didn't when I tested it. And so I just gave up pretty quickly because I couldn't get it to actually close the loop with Zoom. So I would give it, the reason I wanted to use it is so that I could schedule events ahead of time. The other thing is that Zoom creates a new key every time, a new stream key that you have to manage every single time you do a Zoom event directly to YouTube. So when you open up manage keys, right now I have hundreds of keys in there, and I go in and try to get ahead of it. Right now I'm not losing any ground because every week I go in and get rid of 10 or 15, but there's so many, you have to do it one at a time, and it's not like it's like a click, are you sure? Click, are you sure? Click, are you sure? And so it's a super painful thing to get rid of the keys that Zoom is creating, but it creates a new key every single time you turn it on. And so it's so I wanted to go to RTMP, and I tested it. I just couldn't get it to actually start streaming. So we're still working on that. And I just kind of gave up. I'm sure it works with things like Restream. It just, I was using it to go to YouTube, and it didn't work. Next question.
I used it Monday, and it worked for me.
Okay, and I haven't. I did that like months ago. And just was like, oh, this doesn't work, and I went back to what I was doing. So you're streaming RTMP to Zoom, and it has the same. Basically, everything's the same except that you're able to just insert it.
Yeah, I set I built one key, and I just dropped that into the custom service. Because I got frightened by the giving Zoom all my Google credentials.
Well, I don't think you actually give Zoom your Google credentials, because it's, when you get to that interface, it's not, Zoom doesn't, that's part of it not really getting that data, right? That's a web page from Google.
Yeah, you're giving it the ability to create events and things like that, and create stream keys and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Dave Kaufman of Vancouver, British Columbia says, "Is there a common color temperature the panel strives to match?"
We're just trying to make it look good. Like, I don't know if there's a color. Like we're all over the place, as you can see. I mean, it's better than most Zooms, maybe all Zooms that we've seen. So as far as the average quality across the whole thing, I think we do pretty well. But yeah, to your point, we're still bouncing around a bit. I'm sure Charles looks at it going, whoa. All right, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah. So I have my light. It's at 56K. It's a little warm in my room because my entire room is set to D65. But then I do a bit of correcting in camera, and I end up like this. So I think if you're around 55, it should be a nice tone for your skin tones. I think that Alex is around there with the lights that he uses. A lot of people, the lights, I believe the lights from Guy, like the ring lights from Guy, sit somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000. So you get a nice range for the skin tones, which is essentially what you want to focus on, and everything outside of that, just, don't be too concerned about it.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and unfortunately, office hours, depending upon where you are. In my situation, we start out in the dark, and I start out with tungsten, and then the sun comes blasting through this window right next to me, and so I've got to set the camera on auto color balance,
right?
Because there's no way to actually deal with that without having the lights change color as well as the sun comes up, and as the sun comes up, it changes from warm to cooler as it gets later in office hours. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
The Seventh Scroll in Brooklyn, New York, Jack, says, we're interested in your thoughts on the Chronos series of cameras. Worth the investment, or can the same effects be achieved on newer mirrorless cameras?
These are, the Chronos cameras, I'm assuming you're talking about the high-speed cameras. And in that case, I think that they are a little bit on their own. They're not, it's interesting, they're not super expensive, but they're not cheap either. So they're, it's a really interesting, I haven't looked at these for a long time. So for people listening, 1920 by 1080 captures up to 1,000 frames a second. And it had a lower resolution, 24,000 frames per second. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so a friend of mine used them to shoot a while ago. I know they just came out with a new one. They're going to come out with 2.1. The only reservations I had was that the max resolution at 1,000 was 1080. And usually when we shot high speed, we do a little bit of reframing. So when we reframe and scale a little bit, things get a little soft. From what I know, from what I recall, the output was H264 or Cinema DNGs. So we had some limitations. I wasn't too sure about the color, but for the price range, and it's trying to compete with a Phantom, that's, you might as well just add a digit or two.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
It's not bad for web.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, has anyone found a good DC UPS, an uninterruptible power supply for a mini extreme they like? I'm looking at options to add a flight case so that a low U space rack mountable unit would be a big plus.
I haven't done a lot of DC UPSs, I admit. I usually call those batteries. so the I think that you could build a battery. I guess it's a chargeable battery pack with enough power to power the. I mean, to me, it's just I would probably look at things like Anton Bauer batteries and whether they can put out enough power to. They should be able to put up enough power. The Extreme is not a heavy draw. So I don't know what I can't remember what the exact draw is, but I bet you an Anton Power, there's got to be a way to convert that from a DTAP to, to it. And I think that that's probably what I would do. Maybe one, or even if you had to, two, that were on your pack. Of course, you have to be careful if you're putting in a fly pack. Just remember you have to carry those on. You can't leave them in checkable luggage. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
When I got my ISO, I started testing it with, there's these batteries that have high-end milliamps that are meant to, they come with actually jumper cables that could actually jump your car. I've tested those, and they get about an hour to an hour and a half worth of usage, as opposed to a UPS, which would I would guess would start beeping if you had it unplugged. So that would be kind of useless at that point. So that would work for about, like I said, an hour and a half.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just thinking, really, the only thing uninterruptible is wall wart with a solid power supply, because the batteries, I know UPSs are designed for a specific, the power's gone down, I need to bridge the gap between that and the next thing. But 99% of the time, I'm near power, so I guess.
So here's what I would research. What I think a thing worthy of research would be 2 Anton Bauer attachments that also take a DC input. So what you would do is you'd have it so that you'd have to build some circuitry or buy some circuitry for it. But basically, if it loses DC or it loses its input, it's going to swap over to the batteries. And if you have 2 batteries, it means that you could actually pop one in, pop the other one out. You could run all day without any connection at all. But I think that a DC UPS is still something I would just call a battery. I mean, a UPS is a battery, but I think that the real thing that makes a UPS distinct is the fact that it's taking in AC. Once you go to DC, it's just a battery. So, but the reason that I would think about using an Anton Bauer is specifically because you can rent them anywhere. So you wouldn't necessarily need to travel with your Anton Bauer batteries. Any major city will have a place that rents Anton Bauer batteries. So you'd have to put them in your carry-on, but you could move around with them, but you could rent them in most major cities in the country or in the world. Go ahead, JJ.
I've got a kind of odd solution. It's because I live in California. We have that power issue that occasionally, like in the past couple years, we've had to rely on small solar cells. And so I picked up a small power station, which is it's this large. I can see it. It's only about and it's small enough that I was able to run 4 devices in a CPAP overnight and then charge it during the day using direct power from a solar panel.
I think the only thing I would say is that the power, what I would be looking at, you can trickle charge as well. The Anton Bauer piece is a standardized system that is used everywhere. It gives you more places to go if something doesn't work or you can't travel with it or a bunch of other things, as opposed to building something that's custom that isn't standardized to the film production industry, because it'll be harder for you to replace. But you're right. Now I live in California. I'm pricing out a generator for the whole house because I spent 4 days without power last year. Not that I'm bitter. Bill?
Often the soundies on sound carts will use a car battery or a deep cycle marine battery to power a whole bunch of 12-volt things. So I was wondering if you could take an inverter.
Those just aren't very portable. I think this is talking about a fly pack that can travel. Right. That's inside of that restriction. Flight case is those are really hard to take on a plane. It may be impossible. so I don't think you can take those on a plane. Go ahead, Courtney.
Sealed lead acids you can take on a plane, which is what he's talking about. And those are the basic batteries that are used inside most UPSs. Right. It's a lithium ions that are restricted.
Because we definitely carry on the Anton Bauer batteries, but we can't put them in our checked luggage. Next question.
Seven Seal in Brooklyn is back with didn't click. What topic should we enter into mukana second hour suggestions for BeeLinks versus Mac Minis versus Raspberry Pis in instances where they're used as Zoom ISOs, graphic playouts, and playbacks connected to the ATEM Extreme?
Put that in the second hour. No, put it in the second hour suggestions in Discord. So find the second hour suggestion discussion in Discord and put those in there, and that'll be the best place. So, next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois is in with Countryman H6. What connector is the most versatile? Using a MixPad 3, but I see so many connector options.
Well, the most direct one obviously is an XLR. So do the Countryman, where's my Countryman here? I might have put it down somewhere. Do they have the microdot? I mean, so with the DPA, they don't. You have to get them hardwired. So with the DPA, you have a microdot. The microdot means that you've got one case with, the upside of this is that you have one case with all your connectors. You have a TA4, a XLR, whatever else you might need are all little connectors at the end. And you've got this little tiny BNC cable that plugs into it and screws on. The downside of it is if you move around a lot, or as that little connector gets a little worn. Now, I've heard that they've gotten a lot better. My DPA is pretty old. That they've gotten better at it. But the problem we have is you'd have connection issues there, and you hear scratching and breakup and so on and so forth. But overall, that's the most versatile is what DPA does, which is having lots and lots of microdots. And for some reason, I thought that Countryman had rolled out a micro dot version, but I could be wrong. If I was doing it into a USB pre or mix pre, I would get an XLR because I don't like more adapters. Otherwise, I'd probably go, for me, then you have to look at what kind of transmitters. Like your Electrosonic is TA5. I would typically get a TA4 because I use a lot of Shure transmitters. So you have all these, it gets into this like maze of who's using what. Go ahead, Bill.
I find the biggest problem now is that so many people have decided on 3.5 millimeter either locking or unlocking, and that kind of threw a wrench into things, because before that I had the adapters for TA4 and TA5F to XLR, and you could always get to XLR and then adapt that to whatever you wanted. But boy, those 3.5 millimeter units, I can't find anything reliably to adapt them because it doesn't seem like they have a standard pinout.
Yeah, I don't think I would stand unless I was always using 3.5. I definitely wouldn't use that as my base. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I know on the headboard microphones you can get replacement cables, and so you can change the connector that way, but it's the entire cable, and they're only like $59, which is reasonable because the microdot connectors from DPA are $99 to $100 spread there. But they have gotten more reliable. Mine are locking, so at the very end, if I twist, it then locks. And I know what you're talking about as far as like over time. If talent is hard on those things, the older ones, they wear out, and it's so frustrating when they're on stage and you're like,
and there's nowhere to go. Like it's just like you're just kind of like, until they come back. There's nothing you can do, and it's just because you can't, especially if they have a headset on. It's not like you could put two headsets. Like with labs, we would have a prime, like two belt packs. So everything's all completely separate. But with a headset, you're just there, waiting for it to come back, waiting for them to come off stage. All right, next question.
Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana says, I'm testing a Magewell Pro convert to use as an SRT endpoint for lyrics on the iPhone. Has anyone else tried this or have a similar alternative?
I have not tried it. So it does it take SRT and go out? I'm trying to figure out.
I have this model running on our security camera systems at the office, and it converts our multi-view of the security cameras to NDI, so anybody can pick it up in the building, or I can throw it into a meeting.
It's going HDMI. It's going HDMI to NDI.
That's the way we use it, but there may be a firmware update or something that makes it SRT. There's other pro encoder models that do what he's asking. I haven't seen it in the Magewell line, but there are definitely other endpoints like that, and it would work. I mean, you just got to get the right one, like a Kilo View or Bird Dog, or what's the other model that for sure does that? There's a couple
those are SRT
pro
too.
encoders that do one. Yeah,
and those
that's
are
SRT
too.
to receive. Yeah,
and it looks like I'm interested in like H264 to SDI. I'm kind of curious about. It's interesting. Yeah, we have to take a closer look at that. It is supports protocol, so I guess you can stream to it and have it. Interesting. That's a fascinating little box. We'll take a look at that. All right, next question.
Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC. This is going to easily take up our last 4 minutes, is the last question. Panel, what's your favorite piece of gear you've received in the past 30 days?
Received or bought? That's the question. Like, who sent me something? What is my favorite thing that I have? Anyone jump into a favorite? Go ahead, Charles.
This is an Apple Pencil, which signifies the soon-to-arrive iPad Pro 12.9 inch.
Right. There you go. That's a good one. Go ahead, JJ. Sunglass. Oh, the red blue. Monday, by the way. Just warning you. I'll send out a thing. Monday is we're just going to show. We're going to have an anaglyph second hour on Monday. So you didn't buy them in go ahead, Guy.
BeeLink by Courtney. This is the AMD version. This one's like $500, but this one's pretty beefy. It's got the Ryzen with the Radeon Vega 8 graphics in it. It shipped with 8 gigs of RAM. I upped it to 16, and it had a 256 in it. I kept the 256 and added another 1 terabyte NVMe drive. So it's a fast PC now. So I'm running
Like
BeeLinks
a
on
good
it, and
desktop,
it works. Yeah. So thanks for the recommendation, Courtney. Sold.
Yeah. Bill, and then Jeffrey.
This beast, the DJI Osmo, I used this with my iPhone 12 Plus when I was on that shoot in Los Angeles a week and a half ago. And the shots that I got out of that in HDR mode, even intercutting them with my Blackmagic 6K stuff, really looked amazing. And I was shooting in rough conditions, which was the 3rd floor of an apartment or a condo looking directly at a sunset. So it was a really high contrast scene, which normally I would expect to blow out. One little light on the talent, and it was able in HDR on the iPhone 12 to resolve both the face and the sunset beautifully. And I was like, I'm going to play with this more.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
The one thing that was really cool is, as a drummer, we have electronic drums, and of course you have what's called the brain, which controls all the triggers. And Roland has this thing called the TD50, which has been out for a few years now. They updated their TD50 to now the TD50X. But the cool thing about that was the firmware actually could move to my unit. So I didn't have to buy a brand new module to get the sounds and the features that the TD50X has. So I got to download that. It did cost me to do that, but a lot better response from all the drums, and of course, a lot better sounds.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I picked up, they've worked out so great for me, these little Pixel G1Ss.
Oh, nice.
And some customers who we've converted from green screen physical on-site setup to setting on their desk. I found a kit that had not only the Pixel, but it came with a little tripod and the whole bit. So now we can do their broadcasts remotely.
That's awesome. Very cool. We're now going to move on. Changing subjects, we're going to now talk about Cinamaker. And Cinamaker has been bouncing around for months. For us, it's been around for a long time, but it's been for us. It's been this thing that has been popping up, and people keep on saying, "We need to get those guys on. We need to get those guys on." I keep on talking to people like, "When are we going to get them on?" So we finally have Benjamin Nowak and Gary Baker here to talk about Cinamaker, and we're really excited to have. There's a lot of questions, so we'll keep the intro relatively short because people are definitely interested in what you're building. Do you guys want to give us a little bit of an overview of how you got here and what's new?
Sure.
How did you start it? Well, actually, to start it off, how did Cinamaker? Where did this come from? Like, how did this all begin?
Ben, why don't you take that?
Okay, thanks. Well, actually, this Cinamaker evolved from some R&D code I made 5+ years ago, trying to synchronize the clocks in multiple iPhones. We built an audio app, which was, I call it an expensive experiment. It was called TuneMob, but it allowed you to synchronize, play music on all your friends' phones and sync, and it was really cool, but it was just a novelty, and never pursued that, but realized one day that sync was very valuable in video and post-production and live, and that's where it started. And many, many years later, and 100,000+ hours of engineering, we have Cinamaker.
And when did the first version of Cinamaker, when was it released?
So we actually had something, we showed off a proof of concept at NAB. This is, at South by Southwest, and won an award. This was a non-live solution. It was basically syncing up the clocks and allowing you to record and then merge it all together and do something, it's super simple multi-camera recording and editing. We scrapped that and built a full-blown live solution afterwards. So that showed up on the scene in 2018 before it was released at NAB. We got a lot of excitement around it, and we released it probably 3-4 months later. And I can tell you 2.5 years later, we released it a little early, but we live and learn. But we've continued our path, and we're really proud of what we've built.
Yeah, and give us a little overview of the different features of what Cinamaker offers folks.
Sure, I'll be glad to kind of dive into it. Let me load a visual here because it has a good summary. Would you mind pinning my screen if you haven't already, Alex? Yeah, thank you. Increase the resolution as well. Perfect. So in the center here are our core functionality. We've got a switcher. There's an audio mixer built in, our media engine, and I'll walk you through all these in just a moment. Allow for visual effects, and as I mentioned, multi-camera recording and multi-camera editing. Very simple, built in. You'll see to the left and the right of this, we worked real hard to have enable a lot of I/O. So whether it's digital formats pulling in, RTSP encoders or NDI cameras encoders, or a simple iPhone, or the various protocols. And then in terms of output, we can go out HDMI AirPlay, and then simultaneously do RTMP, as well as out to the virtual webcam. And interestingly, and really neat feature we have is our project formats are compatible with Adobe Premiere and Final Cut Pro. So when you're done, you can move your multi-camera project over, not only have your synchronized source media all in multicam format, but it's all in sync. Your media assets transfer. We build your timeline based on your live edits. We worked real hard to make a real smooth integration there to go further.
That's really cool.
But
you go ahead.
I can walk you through the various sections here, and then let's kind of get into the app itself.
Yep, absolutely. Sounds good. And people, you can keep our producers can continue to ask questions. We'll get to them within the next 15 minutes or so. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So just quickly, and I think I'm just going to share my screen, which will be easiest. Now, sharing the screen does mess up the sync. By the way, how's my sync now?
Pretty decent.
Are we back in order?
It's close.
Okay, because I was testing our beta echo cancellation feature. Okay, do I have permissions here? I sure do, thank you. And we'll share the app. Here we go. So you'll be able to see the output in my video window. And this is the Cinamaker interface. At its basics here, it's a switcher. You see on the bottom, I can easily switch to the various cameras I have, the one in front of me. I also have as I mentioned, we can connect. Right now, I've got just a couple iPhones connected, but in my media browser here, I can turn on my, let me get this Zoom window out of the way. I could turn on
this
my
this is all on an
FaceTime camera.
Is this an iPad or
actually this is Mac OS right now. So our application runs on Mac OS, and we have an iPad version as well.
And we're getting some doubling. I think we've got two mics open when you turn on that. There we go.
Sorry, I just turned on another mic. Yeah. Turn that off.
Okay.
So we have both versions. Mac OS is a little bit more robust, and we've got NDI integration, a lot more resources. Sure. But from here, you can access any local cameras. So anything you have connected through USB, webcams.
And how does it handle cameras that are the same name? Like, so if I put two Brios in, will it be able to distinguish between the two?
It will. It may name it, or it may just have two of the same name, but it definitely should handle it without an issue. Mm-hmm. We have Cinamaker capture assistants. So you see we have 3 camera assistants now and 1 audio assistant. This audio assistant is getting the audio from my pocket. We can have up to 8 of these if we want. We can pull audio in many different ways. We can use a digital audio interface of any kind. We can come in through HDMI, through an encoder, through a USB, through a headphone jack, just about anything. To get it in, and we can also mix it once it's in here. Right now, we're just listening to this one lav I have plugged into my iPhone SE in my pocket.
Right.
And then we have an encoder on the network, which is a Sony camera. I'll turn that on. And then another
we're getting
NDI
two.
source.
We're getting 2 mics again.
Sorry, I'll show you how our mixer works. the encoder. You'll see here, I'll switch to the mixer. Let's turn the encoder down. Now we're back to my mic.
It's cool.
So yeah, it will remember that session to session. I just, when you
Yep.
activate it, sometimes you got to mix it in. All right, so camera browser, we have these. We also have NDI sources, and we have this concept called a virtual camera, and I'll show you that in just a moment. We'll empty that and create a slot. So we can live preview, remote control these cameras. So for the iPhones, the one I'm on here, you know, we have a
so
Zoom,
any camera can any
full-blown,
iPhone, because you're running Cinamaker, you're running the app on the phone, so there's a two-way connection to that.
Correct.
Right, got it.
Exactly. So it's Cinamaker Capture is the iPhone app, and that'll run in a video mode or an audio only mode. So if you just want to have it as an audio assistant plugged into a mixer somewhere, it can just pass that through. Full-blown control here, you can really mess it up. And you know, if you do, you can press this button here and it'll automatically focus and set exposure. Manual white balance control. Sometimes if you have different cameras, you're going to want to try to balance them across, and that can be really useful at times.
And how do you attach the cameras to? Do the cameras just find each other over the network?
They do, as long as they all share the same network ID across the multicam studio as well as the cameras. They'll just find each other.
And if
they have
that
to be on the
network
same
is
network as well.
But if that network is really big, like a building or a VPN, would they find their way home?
They can, but it's not as reliable. We really to work effectively, we require a strong local network. So they can, and you can set the latency and settings here to really. You can set it up to maybe 5 seconds, and you can sit here as a director and pull all these other cameras in. They'll come in sync, but you give them 5 seconds for the data to get there.
Yep.
That's more advanced. Most people don't do that. So we have manual controls. We have an audio mixer. We have a full chroma key engine. We can key really any camera. So it's simple as just turning it on the camera for the first camera, and then set a background. And again, I'm not going to demo this here because didn't set up for that. And then we have like basic transitions we can put in place between the switches. And then we've got our media engine. So the media engine is a series of objects that simply turn on and off with the little eyeball here. Within here, you can take your graphic, scale it, size it, put borders, set a transition effect. It's really simple to add these. Let me cancel that so I don't have to position it again. You would click Add Media. We do images. And actually, so you can add images from your camera roll or files. And it's as simple as just going in, selecting it. Let me give you a better demo. Add printer, for example. So all of any object you add here, you have the ability, these kind of advanced controls. So you can crop this if you just wanted to have a vertical or square picture-in-picture. Position that, apply that crop. And then you could take this picture-in-picture, put a border on it if you wanted, and change the color, do a custom color, a Cinamaker color, position that, and even, and then set a transition wipe on it as well, so you can have it slide down, set the duration, dissolves nice and clean, and we can save that object, and then turning it on is as simple as just tapping the button there. We also have we can set up more complex layouts. So if you wanted to do a multi layout, you could do something like this, and I could animate that background. So I'm not. So what we want to do.
And is it possible to do that with? Is it possible for that graphic to be on the foreground instead of the background? Are you able to put a graphic overlay over top? And we're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So,
yeah, there we go.
Just a second. Sorry, I lost focus. Okay, so this logo can go on top. It can can put it over the image as well. And this is all layered, by the way. So if I move it out of the way or behind it, it falls behind the image.
That's great.
And then I could basically set this up to camera 1 source, and that's actually how that's supposed to be. So works a little better. We have the ability to do animations. We can do something simple like this. So let's move over here. So this is just, using text objects built in. Let's get rid of that logo. We also have the ability to, if you want to add a movie from After Effects, so we can do ProRes 444 with transparency, and be able to do, fun stuff like this. With this, you can import, PowerPoint movies and do transparency, not PowerPoint, Keynote, forgive me.
Right.
Those are interchangeable lately. So
and are they
pretty much support,
and it'll do a chroma key or a luma key?
Just chroma key.
Okay.
Just chroma key today.
Yep.
So feature wise, again, we media objects, can add audio clips, picture in picture, text objects, movie, with all the advanced controls in all of them. You can group these pretty easily to do the, the multi-layout, special effects, things like this. We have a virtual camera capability, so we can take, as long as we're using an iPhone with a 4K sensor, I can take this, create a crop of that, as long as it's a quarter of the screen there, I'll get a full 1080p virtual camera. So I can have a tight shot and a wide shot and still maintain a 1080p. So this gets useful for roundtables, things like that, and you don't have multiple cameras to get that effect. We have the ability, what else do we do here? So this big red button is a record button. It allows you to start and stop multi-camera recording. We record a live cut as well as all the ISOs. We can also output from here. We have a direct integration into YouTube, Facebook, or it can go to any RTMP destination from within the app easily.
And that Facebook, the YouTube and Facebook connections are via the API?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're direct. And you can customize it, send it to groups, set your privacy, latency, all kind of custom settings there. So I just hit the record button. This could be a stream and a record, but what it's recording is all these ISOs. It's recording any decisions I make for camera changes, any media I overlay on my face. It's going to track all that. We'll stop it. I'll come back to this in a second. And I think I'm going to wrap this demo, and then I have a little sneak peek surprise of a new product that's coming next month that I think the audience will really like.
Yeah.
It's a Zoom integration we've been working on for 6 months. We're real proud of.
Yeah.
So this is going to get tricky. I'm going to stop this because Cinamaker is controlling my output. It's also controlling my audio. I have to switch my microphone while I take us into the editor because I'll kill my live production. So bear with me a second.
Meanwhile, if there are any questions, this will take only a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, we've got a lot of questions stacking up.
We do. And our first one comes from Tony Mobley. And Tony says, is there a use case for Cinamaker working with an atem mini? And if so, which versions work the best?
Great question. So I think for the most flexibility, you want to use the Mac OS version in general. The atem mini, we can take as an input. We can send out to it. I don't believe that has an NDI in. We accept NDI in. We can also broadcast NDI. It really does the job of an ATM mini and then some, but also could collaborate, just being another source either into Cinamaker, or Cinamaker could be a source into the ATEM Mini to give you some further cameras expandability, possibly.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
So just real quickly, this is the editor here. And I just recorded, what is it, 1:11 here. And you'll see immediately when I was done, everything here is online. So
and you need
now
to
I'm
share
playing
your
it
screen.
back.
You need to share your screen.
Oh, I need to share the editor. Sorry. Didn't realize I lost that. Thank you, Gary. Share. Okay. You should be able to see it now. So from here, the interface looks just like live production, but this is in editing mode. So now we're playing everything back, and you'll see all the ISOs are down there on the bottom. If I want to, and you'll see it kept the switch there. And if I move along, you'll see so with this mode, we can be in playback mode, or we have an overwrite mode where we can basically change any of our decisions very simply in a live editing type fashion. So if, for example, I wanted to use this camera here, I could go to overwrite mode, just tell it I want to overwrite my camera decisions, hit record, and it'll switch, and I can switch it again, back. And you see the colors are changing on the bottom. And I can take this and I can overwrite any media asset I used or camera audio if I had an extra mic on accidentally and I need to go turn it back off. All that works in overwrite mode. It also has a simple cut, copy, paste, which we're actually working on some improvements. This is really good for, cutting the head and tail off and cleaning it up, not necessarily extensive editing. We'd recommend you pull it into one of the other editors. But for, recutting your live cut or just recording and coming back to it later and doing your live edits here, it's a really fast way, simple way to do multi-camera. You can undo moves and all that other fun stuff. So this is the editor. Let's go with some questions. And then while we're doing that, I'm going to switch to my iPad, which has another demo we're going to give.
Sounds good. Let's go to the next question.
Comes from Guy Cochran here in the panel from Seattle, Washington. Panasonic uses a custom Cinamaker build for their pan tilt zoom iOS app live control. Can you tell us if other pan tilt zoom cameras and controls will be supported in a future version of Cinamaker?
Great question. And yes, we absolutely hope to have the Panasonic controls, as well as I forget the standard everybody uses, Sony's Visca. Thank you. Yeah. So we're working to bring that to it. We had a deal with Panasonic where we were going to hold off for a while, but our product has really exceeded what they've invested in building theirs out. So we've got a lot of people asking, and we're working that out with Panasonic now.
That's great. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Newman, Georgia, often panelist here, says, how best to use Cinamaker for outdoor events? What additional hardware is needed for things like weddings and concerts? And I just have a question. Is this Wi-Fi only, or is it Bluetooth as well?
We are Wi-Fi or Ethernet. We work very well on gigabit Ethernet, and we've got some tests where multi-gig, we're running a multi-gig backbone, but really depends on the use case. Wi-Fi 6 works great in most situations. If you have a strong enough hotspot you're dealing with, you can do a 4-camera shoot in Wi-Fi. We're all Wi-Fi right now. We can, Wi-Fi interference is the biggest issue. A lot of y'all are very familiar with. So in those cases, we recommend Ethernet. So if you're dealing with a crowd of 15, 20, 25 people with their mobile phones, that's where you start to really have issues pushing the stream through the air. And we recommend wiring everything via Ethernet. And that would be through, whether it's an encoder or even iPhones with an Ethernet adapter on them. Everything can plug up real easily.
Next question.
Carl Marxer in New York says, is there any kind of telestrator capability built into Cinamaker? And how would you do that effect?
Forgive my ignorance. Please define telestrator for me.
The text that goes up in front of a presenter,
Thank
through a mirror.
Yeah. No,
so the answer is no. No.
The answer is no. Well, although, we can, any of our cameras will go right in those sectors.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, not directly. We do have a neat feature that I didn't mention, which allows you to, so you can send your output to an HDMI or AirPlay, and we have a comment mode where you can actually, if you have a big screen, you can read Facebook or YouTube comments as they come down on a big screen. So that's a neat thing, but unrelated. Same, but different.
yeah, absolutely. Next
he
question.
Said actually that one was telestrator, so I wonder if he's talking about using an
teleprompter. I was thinking teleprompter. So telestrator.
Is it always a clean feed, or
this is what we're trying to reproduce.
Oh, that's great. So so the way we probably want to do that is just sending the output of another iPad as one of these windows that you could switch to, and you could even do as an overlay.
Like a chroma
so
key.
We can broadcast from another Mac, from an iPad or iPhone into one of these slots here on the screen.
That's great. Absolutely. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle here on the panel. Is a physical wire possible, or is it just Wi-Fi? We answered that, I think, with
Yep.
Both.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. Next question.
So next is Tony Mobley from Newman, Georgia, again, with what is needed to use high-end video cameras with Cinamaker.
So we support taking encoders. Today, 1080p 60 is kind of our max. Our 3.0 release coming this year will support 4K recording and streaming. But right now with an encoder, we can do a 1080p 60, 30 megabit per second stream. And that satisfies most professionals, but not every professional. So we kind of have our limits.
Well, and probably to get the cameras in, you'd probably just convert them to NDI, right? Or I guess basically any digitizer, if you had a mini recorder or a deck link or whatever, you could see all of those types of digitizers, right?
Exactly. Well, if they conform to NDI or RTSP spec.
Well, are you able to see input devices though, like a Blackmagic deck link card so if you're on the Mac and you have
it shows up like a USB device.
Just shows up as another device. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Next question.
Charles Klein in New York City is up with, if using an iPhone 12 Pro, how do you change lenses? Can you from like the ultra wide to the telephoto that's built in?
I'm going to get my assistant here, Bernardo, if you could change the lens on this. Unfortunately, I don't have that remote control, but we have a setting to switch between the three lenses. Let me go to that camera. That's that one. If you could just switch between the couple, and that should switch for us.
So are you
are
you able to? You're not able. Are you able to remote control that from Cinamaker as far as switching lenses?
We will. We don't at the moment. We're switching. Hold on. Sorry.
That's fine. It's fine. That's. I think that was really the core of the question.
This is actually my wide. This is my wide shot right here.
The two, and there's the wide, and there's the one.
Right. So within the app, you can do it, right? It's just a matter of
from the app itself. I had to walk over to it.
Yep.
Teach Bernardo. He's our ops guy, not a technical guy.
And no, we're not giving up Bernardo.
That's right.
Next question.
Jeff Widgren of Kansas City, Missouri says, is there a preview mode that would enable changes or builds to be made while we're live?
Preview mode. Yeah, absolutely. So right now, I could add a media asset. I can go in and modify the location.
If you can share your screen, we can.
Okay, I will. Well, actually, I'll show you the result, then I'll share my screen. So I just moved that one asset from the bottom to the top.
Right.
And then let's go and share. Got to look beyond that. There we go. Sorry. So yeah, if you look in my output window, I can go in here, and while I'm working on this, you don't see that output. So I can reposition that, save that, and then it just shows up in the output. Or I can add media, put a movie. Oh, we can add YouTube URLs and live HLS streams, which are also pretty cool when playing movies. Add a countdown, something simple here. I've got all my.
And when you a live HLS, so you're just simply inserting the M3U8 in, like the URL to the M3U8 to grab onto the HLS
and then
live
it'll
stream.
Pull it and cache a little bit of it and start playing it. Yeah.
Yep.
So I've got the counter set up here.
So I noticed that you're rotating it in 2D. Does that have the capability of a 3D engine, or is it a 2D engine?
No, it's just 2D right now. Yeah. And then playing it is just as, starting it up there, and you'll see the output.
It's a lot of fun. That's a fun text effect. The everything little bouncing. That's cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we.
I know that probably took a little time to get that working.
These are multiple text objects. Oh yeah, that was done in another tool, but these text objects just have different timing on them. But these are all created inside the app, so you can do animations outside or simple stuff inside with just the transitions engine. Let's turn this off. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to switch to my iPad. So I'm going to change my output here just a second. What happened? Control. I'm going to stop a share. Any questions, feel free because I'm going to actually go and set this up.
Let's go ahead, Bill. Let's go to the next question.
Tony's back in with another one from Newman, Georgia. Is there any additional audio, software, or hardware needed with an iOS device to use Cinamaker?
Nope.
No, it'll just use the built-in one.
Straight off.
And then Tony has a follow-up. Can the Cinamaker staff share their thoughts on using Cinamaker in a small church setting for hybrid worship?
A very common setup. And small churches can really get away with an iPad and 2 or 3 iPhones really easily. In a virtual setup. If it's a very small church and they use Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6 devices, Wi-Fi will work. But
you could theoretically just get some parishioners just make their iPhones available, give them some Ethernet cables, and plug it back into It's kind of a cool little because everyone's got one laying around. I mean, that could be there.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. Next question.
Well, I've just switched.
Oh, go.
Yep, go ahead.
My only concern is there's so many questions. We just want to stay ahead of it. But if you're ready to show something else,
all right.
show something the Zoom.
Yeah, let's switch to the demo. Look at my beautiful ceiling. So I'm coming output from the iPad here, and what I'm going to do is what I'm going to show you is our Zoom integration, and it allows us to pull in remote guests from Zoom so that we can have an interactive discussion here, and I can do a recording. And it's just a really simple way to bring, forgive me, I'm adjusting that. We can do a full remote production. So I could have all Zoom cameras that I bring in, or we can, I can just, talk to Dan. So I'm gonna invite our community manager, Dan, to this. You'll see I'm just gonna go into the camera browser. I've got to log into Zoom.
Let me just real quickly just mention, so what you're looking at is the Cinamaker camera browser that you saw previous, but this is now with Zoom directly integrated into Cinamaker.
Right.
So, so once I log in, I hope I put in my password properly. Yeah. We're on the network. Well, I never expected it to fail here. This was too early. Yeah, this is the easy part. This works without issue. Let me see if I can come back to this one there.
Here.
I will warn everybody, this is beta. Wrong one there. now that everybody has my password.
It doesn't show. It didn't show up. It hides
Oh,
it.
it didn't come through? Look at that.
It's interesting. I was worried about it when you started typing. I was like, password, YouTube. Not a good mix.
Right.
So
gonna have people.
You'd be surprised at how fast people will pick up on it.
I just changed networks. Let's go to a question while I figure out why I'm
absolutely.
not
Go ahead, Bill.
Sure. Leland Best is up next from Corona, Michigan, often panelist here, and says, can Cinamaker crop camera inputs within various shapes? For example, circles, polygons, and so forth.
Great question. That's coming. Right now, we can only do rectangles and squares.
Okay. Next question.
Shape wipes on the way. Dave Kaufman of Vancouver, BC says, so this is is this a replacement for my atem mini or other hardware switcher?
Well, I can at least say that as software that does not rely on hardware, this is available today and can be used, as Benjamin mentioned, across iOS devices and digital cameras. It does pretty much the same thing as the atem switcher, and it's software, so it's comparable.
So
all right.
Next question.
The demo gods gave me.
Oh, we're back.
Is that what they call them? Go ahead, please.
Okay, so let's dig into Leland's question. Leland's Best. Can Cinamaker ingest video in RTMP or SRT? And I think you just mentioned that it does RTMP.
The RTMP, does it? Do you have any support for SRT?
No.
Do you have any plans?
No. That's a good question. We're looking at SRT and a couple others and in our 3.0, and we will support more than RTMP. Just haven't figured all that out exactly yet.
Next question.
Dave Kaufman of Vancouver, British Columbia says, how's the performance on the M1 and is it compatible?
It actually performs great. It's very compatible. And today, because we started on iOS, we're in process of building a native M1 release, which we think will be extremely great. But performance is better than any Intel-based chip. So we're real pleased, and it's very stable.
So the iOS app, it's the iOS version that runs on the M1, and then or is it the M1 or is it the Mac version that runs on the M1 or both?
They both do.
Okay.
They both do.
I got it.
But soon our Mac version will run natively as a native PowerPC.
Great.
App.
Yep. Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette says, is NDI input supported on the iPad version? Did we cover that or not?
No, their SDK does not support that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Next question.
Jason Blinn in Toledo, Ohio is up next with what feature improvements are you most proud of over the past year?
Good one. I would say what I'm about to demonstrate would be our most compelling new feature we're proud of. We've worked hard to just really get our platform as bulletproof as we can and buttoning things up. So we really haven't launched a lot of new features this year other than macOS and our new Meeting Director product, which is just a lightweight version of what you're seing here. But the neatest thing, that's a good
it looks like
transition. Yeah, let's go in here because we did get logged in.
Excellent.
Once we have an account and we're logged in, we can start a meeting. We can make up a title here, and it'll through the SDK, it goes and generates a new meeting. We're going to take that meeting information and we're going to share it. I'm going to share it with Dan, our community manager, who should be standing by. And he just got an invite. So we're going to hang out here. Now, this will support, when we release it, up to 3 guests at once. Once you had too many guests, the resolution drops down too low. So we're going to have to limit how many remote guests we can bring in.
And is that the resolution? Is that a Zoom thing? Is that a Zoom thing that the resolution drops down?
It's a Zoom thing today. Yeah. Yeah. We're working to find other solutions with them. So Dan's in the waiting room. So right now I could, he's in meeting, but he's not in our session. So now he's technically in a green room. So if we had a producer that was on this Zoom call that I invited also, they could be having a dialogue now while, we're running the production.
And when you say green room, you're talking about, is it a breakout room?
Yeah, it's actually it's a separate Zoom session that they're all chatting in.
Okay.
But I haven't yet brought him into the production yet because it's just my one camera and my one mic right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I'm going to turn him on, and we'll go back here. And there's Dan. Dan, are you with us?
Yes, I am. How are you doing? Good morning, everybody.
All right. You guys hearing Dan okay?
Yeah, we're hearing great.
We are.
Perfect. So what we've got here is we have a switcher. I can talk. Sorry about my silly hat. Go here. And if we want, let's do a couple picture-in-pictures and see if I have this set up well. There's one. There's Dan. Look, that worked out. So, we could do a remote production. Dan, tell us who you are and what you do every Tuesday and Thursday here.
My name is Daniel Flores. I am an illustrator and live streaming aficionado. And for the past few weeks, on a Tuesday and a Thursday in the morning and then late in the evening, I do the webinars for Meeting Director, which is what we've been using so far this morning to connect to the Zoom and share our screen and share various different video and audio sources.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. This is awesome. The Office Hours team is very impressed.
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Thanks for playing.
All right.
Real quick. Thank you, Dan. Real quick, I just want to point out the big red button. The big red button there, as you know, allows us to record. So this is a great tool for recording live interviews and remote guests. And then, of course, being able to live stream it and go out to live meetings at the same time.
What's the quality of that recording? And do you record it locally, or is it to the cloud into your system like Zoom does? Or what are the aspects that you recorded in?
It's all local. It's 1080p. We have multiple bit rates we support inside the app, depending upon what your network connection is. We're just running at 3 megabit right now. But I'm sorry, the question again.
Resolution.
It records it, but it's recording the drive though. And for our panelists, make sure to use
the live cut. Yeah, it records the live cut as well as all the source ISOs.
Yep. Next question.
Roscoe Jones is up next with what's the highest quality codec we can master to, or does RTSP determine the maximum quality?
So we support I'm trying to, so we can output H264 or H265 depending upon the device we're on and its capabilities. But the codec it's just Apple's native, whatever they call it.
So, are you using? Sorry, are you able to write to Apple ProRes, or is it to H264 movies?
It's H264 and H265. Yeah, we don't have ProRes output.
Okay. Yep. Next question.
Yeah.
Mark Harder of Sunnyside, Queens is up next. Do the ISO records record discrete audio from each iPhone? Also, this will never work with Android, correct?
So they do record discrete ISO, so you can go back and mix things in later if you wish. We spent 7 or 8 months building Android and kind of stopped because we wanted to put our energies in here. There's a number of challenges to deploy this on Android. We will have an Android camera client, and you can connect Android running an NDI app today. But unless Google wants to give us a bunch of money, Android's still on hold.
Well, and I want to. There was
Contact
go
us. We're happy to continue it. Just-
for questions, let's have the panelists put them into mukana so that everyone is part of that process. Next question.
Guy Cochran comes in next from Seattle. Can you bring a Zoom remote guest into one of those picture-in-pictures?
And we did. We saw that there. So the remote guest was brought into a PIP. And just to make sure we're clear that with each one of those remote guests, if you brought in 3 remote guests, you'd have 3 audio and video isolated tracks. Is that right?
That's correct. And just FYI, go ahead. Let me get my audio assistant.
You're getting me in sync. All of our remote guests are mixed minused out, so they don't hear themselves.
So they're
just getting back the audio track.
Are you essentially creating a new room for each person? They're not in the same room together, right?
They're in the same room, but then we pull the streams in one at a time, the raw audio video stream.
So on their side, they see each other. On their side, like when they're joining that room, they see each other in that room and you. Is that correct? So there's like 4 of you, up to 4 of you in the same room.
Yeah, sorry, I had my focus. Just a moment, sorry. You guys hear me? Yeah. So they get the program output. So if I'm displaying them on the screen,
right,
they will see each other. They also can see any other guests in their Zoom session, but none of that audio video comes into the Cinamaker session.
And
if they're talking in it, they have to be there. That guest has to be brought into the Cinamaker session for their audio to be live, and then they have to be switched on for their video to go, or mixed in and switched on.
But they're all in the same meeting, same ID together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Copy that.
That's correct.
That's pretty tight integration.
Now today, it's fun. It's been a lot of work, and
yeah, I'm sure.
What's exciting is the next, what we're working on trying to make happen now is to allow you guys to talk to Dan in that other session, or to pull in one of you from this session into the Cinamaker session,
right?
Instead of having to have a separate one. But we're working through some things with the SDK, but we're very hopeful, and we're making really good progress. So very excited about it.
Absolutely. Next question
comes from Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC, and Dave asks, "How do you connect wired cameras?" And well, that was pretty much touched on, wasn't it? Just
yeah, we can
Ethernet.
Use either Lightning to Ethernet adapters. There's a few aftermarket ones are made, and Ethernet encoders.
Next question.
And a hub.
And a hub. Yeah, it's a switch, preferably my experience has been a dumb switch. So as opposed to something else more expensive. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, what we've done in meetings is use the power over Ethernet. So you could get an adapter. So your iPhones could last. What we were doing a 3-day conference, and we didn't have to switch iPhones out for battery charging. They just had power. So
Ethernet. If you put PoE, into an Ethernet jack into an iPhone, it will charge the iPhone.
Yes.
And I would assume it's important to have PoE and not PoE plus, or is it smart enough to know the difference?
I'm not sure which bicables have.
Right. You don't want anything smoking. Yeah. All right.
Our
next
adapters aren't plus.
Go.
Yeah.
Next question.
Guy Cochran's back with, how are you seeing Cinamaker used in the field these days, John?
That one's aimed at John Idelson.
Oh.
Good. Go for it.
Okay. Well, with our state parks, we do these electronic field trips. Of course, pre-COVID, we had a project where there were going to be funds to bring students to the parks in a bus. And so what we wanted to do is have the students, when they went back to their classroom, create shows. And the ability for a classroom to set up a studio, they have iPads, they have iPhones. So we were going to have the students create programs that then they would call the ranger into their program. They could bring footage that they shot while they were at the park. So it was giving the school classroom the ability to produce a show without needing anything other than what was traditionally there. If they were an iPad school, they had an iPad, they had iPhones, and you've got a studio.
That's great. Next question.
And
comes from Courtney Gooden of Hollywood. Any plans to cross-platform or do a PC version? But I think you were talking about that for Android.
And the answer is
PC is definitely coming. It's on our roadmap. I can't give you a date on that, as well as we have some really great stuff we're doing in the cloud as well. We're excited about.
So it's just the Android. Android's going to be camera only, but you're looking at PC and cloud. And yeah, a PC version to us, I can definitely see how a PC version put into the cloud would be super interesting as far as that goes. I mean, a lot of us are using BeeLinks for that solution right now. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Great
Our friend Jonas Dottell of Reutlingen, Germany says, does it show and recording indicator on the Zoom call when you've enabled recording?
It does not. We don't have that level of API integration, but that's an interesting point, a good one.
Next question.
Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana says, what's the release date for the Zoom integration? Do you have one?
Release dates. We don't have a firm date. I'm going to be really upset if it takes us beyond the end of this month. We're pushing hard to get it done before June 1st.
That's great. Now I'm going to ask you a harder question that I don't expect a yes, but I'm just going to say, now have you experimented with any kind of AR, adding graphics or embedded stuff into the camera on the camera end?
Short answer is no.
Okay.
We've done a bunch of fun R&D in a lot of areas, but not in AR yet.
Yeah. No, it seems like when you start playing with clips on an iPhone 12, you start going, oh, you could just put all this, stuff around it. And I think right now, like clips is something that is cute, but I can see how you could have integrated graphics that are, if you're talking about something, things popping up and being cued to fire within the camera. And I was thinking about it while you were talking about something else that, with AR, you could have it integrated and you could figure that out and have things popping up. But those could be, because you have that direct connection between the phone and the home unit, in the control unit. The control unit could be firing the AR in the phone, which is then compositing and sending it back over the feed, so that somewhere central could be popping up graphics around that person. That person doesn't have to do it like on the camera. Anyway, it was.
I like it. And from multi-camera, that gets interesting. You think of the location of the camera, and you have the objects and track them. We've had discussions around this, but
anyway, just curious.
Dropping objects into scenes and catching it from whatever camera you're looking at in proper view is kind of
really interesting if you were able to integrate, like if you have 3 or 4 cameras and they can use that data that they're getting in from LiDAR to understand where they are in the space. And then having, so if you cut, you can have an AR system where you're cutting between the things and the AR is correct. Like you get a side angle of that 3D model that was floating in the front angle. You'd probably be the only ones that could do that right now.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, but you don't need to make it up. You can actually get it from the other angle. But yeah, mixing those two technologies gets real interesting.
Yeah. I think we have one more question for you. Oh, go ahead.
We have one more general question. Well, actually, another one just came in. But for right now, Leland Best in Corona, Michigan's back in with, is closed or open captioning on the roadmap?
No. Short answer, no. It needs to be. We've had to go back to one of Guy's earlier questions in terms of our customers and our targets. We really have been targeting the beginner, emerging creator. We like to think we built something very powerful that professionals can use and really get a lot of utility out of. But there are certain things that we just are waiting till we have enough demand for, and our user base, which is more emerging creators, podcasters, churches, business enterprises, they're just not there yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Ronnie Settle in La Plata, Maryland says, what would be the cheapest generation of iPhone you'd recommend for use with Cinamaker today?
So we use the first generation iPhone SE, which is, I think, the same CPU as iPhone 6S. That would be the minimum one.
Next question.
Well, Tony Mobley, his and John Ellson's question should be paired together. Can you share the pricing? And John said, is there a discount for office hours viewer? Having just bought Cinamaker myself, it's extraordinarily affordable already.
Well, and it turns out you might have bought it just a little too soon, Bill. It looks like we've got.
No, I'm happy to support. You guys are doing great work, and I don't feel bad about that.
So there's your annual license. There's your code. How long is this code good for? Because people on YouTube are going to watch it later.
This will go for the next 60 days.
Okay, great, fantastic. So you can use this right now to get 20% off the annual price. And what is the annual price typically?
We are at $199 for the multicam director studio, $199 a year, and then we are at $79 a year for the meeting director product.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, that's good. It's good. A good deal. So anyway, so that sounds great. It looks like we have one more question rolling in here.
Yeah, we have a question from our friend Steve Bays in San Francisco. And Steve says, more advanced final video finishing like Creative Cloud, CC, could be done by importing XML into Final Cut Pro and or Premiere. So he's giving you a tip about how you can do even more on the back end.
No, that's great. Great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bays. And Ben, why don't you take a moment to talk about outputting a project from Cinamaker into Final Cut and Premiere?
Sure. I touched on it earlier, but as I'll share my screen here. Well, there's no need. Our project files are almost 100% compatible. We can't keep up with their changes as frequently as we'd like, but we retain all of the source media, all the metadata. So when you go into either of those tools and you open up Cinamaker projects, your media is all in sync. It's in multicam format. Your timeline is built, any media assets you used, your audio mix is done. So you really have your first cut done and you're just tweaking any of your edits. So just even, some people just use this as kind of pre-production automation for multi-camera just because it does all of that setup for them, even if they're not going to stream. It's just a lot of utility just as a recording tool.
One of the things that we often, and are you able to, I guess you could relink files, but one of the things that we find is that you have to cut a show live if you're going to call the cameras, because you got to know whether otherwise if you just record the ISOs, you can end up with dead spots where no camera operator is shooting something that you can use. And so that always becomes more of a challenge. Go ahead, John.
Well, one of the things that's nice about doing it to the Final Cut is that you can use the green screen in Cinamaker for your live stream, but it's got the limitations of that green screen. But when it goes into Final Cut, that green screen is gone and you could re-green screen it. So we've been able to do an event where, as you know, Alex, sometimes you don't like green screen. But once you get into Final Cut and you're re-edit, you can really clean that up.
Yep. Next question.
Steve Bays is back again.
He just corrected that it was closed captioning, not Creative Cloud, to do the more advanced pieces. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, Mark Harder then from Sunnyvale. What if you were someplace without a Wi-Fi network, a park or a desert? Can your system connect via mobile data?
So today, no. Soon it will. And you can use an iPhone as a hotspot, any one within the last 4 or 5 years, and it works really well if you're just doing 2 or 3 cameras.
Anything like a MiFi or anything else like that will also provide it, even if it can't get cellular.
Fine if you don't push it. Right.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, you can just do Wi-Fi only, do your recording.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
We have been in deserts with this. And setting up your own Wi-Fi network, that's great because you have no interference. The cactus doesn't really bother it, but then getting it out is the challenge. And we've been having various positive results depending on whether Verizon, AT&T has a tower near where we're working.
And are you able to have the phones record their own ISOs back locally?
We used to. We don't today. And it's really just been a usability issue for our users. They don't want to move stuff around afterwards. But with our 4K release, we're going to be support a couple different modes, and give some more flexibility that would allow you to do that.
I do work in a lot of vision work, Dolby Vision, and so the phone being able to record vision locally, even if I'm cutting something, and then being able to re-link that vision asset back to an edit would be super interesting. So anyway, we got another question.
In the old version, it worked that way.
Oh
yeah. John remembers.
The next one comes.
What I would say is that I don't think it would distinguish itself that much until I had the need for that HDR asset. So the fact that I know that it's a complicated process because of the way that vision's managed by the phone. It would not be trivial to do that, but it would be the only thing that you could easily do a high dynamic range edit with. Go ahead. Next question.
Leland Best, Corona, Michigan is up next with, does the Zoom guest require an account to enter the Cinamaker studio?
No, not at all. They just need a Zoom client and a meeting ID, and they're in.
And then I think we have one more general question now that we're in the last minute. So first of all, I want to thank Benjamin and Gary for joining us. A lot of questions. We learned a lot really fast. I think there's a lot of interest in trying to solve this, and I can definitely see how a lot of people could find this super useful. So we really.
Thank you.
I'm glad you got to as far as you are. I mean, now that you had something to show with Zoom and all the other bits and pieces, I think our timing was good. Really excited to see the Zoom and that Zoom integration is the next month or so. We hope.
Yes, before June.
Right.
That's the push.
Before June 7th. Anyway, so all right. So anyway, we're gonna one more general question that rolled in while we were in the second hour. Let's go ahead and just answer that one. That's a real quick one, I think.
Sure. Abraham in San Diego said, "Does anyone know if I can use the new iPad Pro as an external monitor with an ATEM Mini Pro?"
And the answer is no. No. The new iPad, maybe. We don't know yet. About what it can do as far as digitizing. You probably need some kind of external digitizer. It has the processor to do that, but the question is whether it'll actually be ready to do that. So we'll see how that goes. Again, thanks again to Benjamin and Gary. Thank you for the discount. It's amazing. So folks, hopefully we'll get that into the notes as well on YouTube so people can just click on it. But remember, 20% off that you can sign up for Cinamaker. You just got to use that coupon code. That's going to be great. I think that'll push everybody along a little bit. And thanks to our producers for an excellent set of questions once again. We expected you to do well, and you rose to the occasion yet again. 400 sometimes. And thanks to the panel for answering all those questions and building up yet another great conversation for a couple hours. Go ahead, John.
Just say, are we going to go to after the post show?
Go to the post show. Yep.
Yeah, we need to probably tell Gary and Ben how to get to it because they're not regulars here yet.
So for Gary and Benjamin, at the email that you got probably this morning, at the very bottom, there's a link to the post show. That's a different Zoom meeting than this one. And probably 30 to 50 people here will go hang out there now that they're done. Because this wasn't, 4 hours wasn't enough. So we're going to have another, we usually have another hour. So so you're more than welcome to, if you want, you can come and hang out with everybody a little bit longer too. All right. Okay.
Will there be coffee?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Virtual coffee. Yeah, we'll, it'll come right out of your cappuccino machine on your side. So as long as you have the Breville. All right.